Well, hello, you good people. Welcome to Quarantine Cooking. I'm so glad that you all are here. You know, I'm always in search of the perfect burger, and going mostly plant-based has been a challenge in that department because there are some good plant-based burgers, but they don't taste like burgers. I'm sorry to say, but I'm still trying. So tonight, we're going to try yet another recipe for black bean, mushroom, and farro burgers. We're also going to have some curly fries, and I'll show you this nifty little machine that makes spiralized vegetables. But as they say, life is short, so cook and eat dessert first. We're also going to be trying black bean brownies. I love the versatility of beans. They're inexpensive, they're easy to cook, and if you don't have the time to cook them dried to usable, you can always buy the canned. So we're going to start with our recipe of black bean brownies. And when I put these recipes up on Facebook, our music director, the wonderful and talented Dr. Fred Irwin, apparently looked at it and had some questions, because his response to my post about tonight's menu was black bean brownies. To which I say, yes, Dr. Fred, absolutely black bean brownies. It's a time-tested vegetarian, vegan recipe for making brownies that don't have any eggs or dairy in them. So we're going to give it a shot. So these are black beans that I cooked up from dry. I cooked them in the crock pot, put them in about 9-ish this morning. They were done by about 2 or 3. I didn't put any seasoning in there at all, not even salt, because they're going for brownies. If I had put in onions and celery and hot peppers, this would be a very strange tasting batch indeed. So these are absolutely plain, unseasoned black beans, cooked from dry into edible, right? And on top of that, you'll see this stuff, that's quick oats. The recipe calls for quick oats, and you'll also see that they're in a food processor. This recipe apparently calls for all of the ingredients to be very well blended, pulverized, as a matter of fact. So we have our 1.5 cups of completely unseasoned black beans. You could also use canned, 15.5 ounce can of black beans that are like no sodium or reduced sodium, well drained and dried out a little bit. So 1.5 cups of black beans, 1/2 cup of quick oats. What we're going to add to that is 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. So really rich chocolate flavor. A little bit of cocoa powder goes an awfully long way. So 2 tablespoons of that right into the bowl. I love my food processor. I don't know what I would do without it, especially now, cooking the way that I do. So 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. We'll put in 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder right there. And we will add 1/2 cup of canola oil. You can also use coconut oil. I have baked with coconut oil in brownies before, and it made the texture weird, for lack of a better term. So I'm going to try it with canola oil this time and see if it comes out a little bit less weird. I can't really think of another word for the texture. It wasn't bad. It was just, weird. So half a cup of canola oil, 1/2 cup of maple syrup. You could also use honey or agave, if that's your thing, not mine. And maple syrup is expensive, but it's worth it. Not on pancakes. I like fake syrup on pancakes. Like, this is an ongoing argument with me and several people I know, fake syrup or real syrup. Real syrup for baking, fake syrup for pancakes. Fight me. I hear you. No, don't fight me. I'm a priest. Don't fight me. So 1/2 cup of maple syrup. We'll put in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. 1. Oh, well, might as well just use the rest. And into recycling it goes. And we'll put in a good hefty pinch of salt, because nothing goes better with sweet than salt, in my opinion. So here we all have it. 1.5 cups of black beans, 1/2 cup of quick oats, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, 1/2 cup of canola oil or coconut oil, 1/2 cup of maple syrup or honey or agave or whatever it is that you like, and then a good generous pinch of salt. And we're just going to let this baby go, because it's got to be very, very well blended. So It's very sludgy. I like it. Okay. I'm going to stop for just a minute and scrape down the sides here. I want to make sure that I follow the directions to the letter and make sure it's very well blended. It does not smell like black beans, just in case any of you are worried about that. It smells like chocolate to me. And the texture is very much like brownie batter. And this, I mean, I know it sounds cheesy to say that brownies can be good for you, but these kind of actually are. Dark cocoa powder is good for you. I mean, it's got some compounds in it that are good for you. The black beans are most certainly good for you. There's only a half a cup of oil and a half a cup of sweetener in there. So how bad could it be, right? And oats. Oats are good for you, right? So let's blend it just a little more. Okay. So we have here what looks like pretty traditional brownie batter. And the last step that we're going to take is to stir in a half cup of chocolate chips. You know, semi-sweet. I'm going to taste just this little tiny bit of batter. It's good. It tastes like chocolate. I mean, what could go wrong? So I've dumped in a half cup of chocolate chips, and we're just going to kind of very carefully stir that in. Okay. And there was a little bit of residual oil on the bottom of the food processor bowl, so I'm incorporating that as well. The good thing is there's no flour in here, so I don't have to worry about over mixing it because it's not going to get tough from the gluten because there isn't any gluten. So if you have people in your life that are dairy intolerant or gluten intolerant or egg intolerant, this is the perfect, well, I don't want to say it's the perfect recipe until we taste it. So far, if you're trying to avoid these things, or someone that you like to cook or bake for is trying to avoid those things, it's a good recipe. Look at that. Some of them drop right through. No, fix that. So this is an 8x8 baking pan. It's been prepared with a little bit of that spray cooking oil. So I'm just going to empty the batter out in here. And the oven is preheated. Hey, Beth, guess what the oven is preheated to right now? It's 350. Casseroles, brownies, it never fails. When in doubt, set the oven to 350 and you'll probably be okay. So we're spreading this chocolatey, chocolate chippy, beany batter into this 8x8 pan that's been sprayed with cooking oil. Okay. Nice and smooth, get it all in there. Okay, there we go. So you see, other than the fact, if I had had beans, cooked beans on hand, that would have knocked off some of the prep time. It took about, what, 5 minutes to get this going. So I'm going to put this in the oven, which is at, like I said, 350. And I'm going to set the timer. I'm setting the timer for 15 minutes. So here we go. 10, 15. Okay. So while those are baking, we're going to make our burgers. So in this pan or in this bowl right here, what I did earlier was cooked 2/3 of a cup of farro. Let me show you what farro looks like, just in case you might have forgotten from our previous classes. Farro is a grain, okay? It's a lot like barley, but it doesn't take hours and hours and hours to cook. It takes about 30 minutes to cook if you don't pre-soak it. You can also pre-soak it overnight, and it takes about 15 minutes to cook. You can also use an Instant Pot or a slow cooker if you've got all day to cook it. This took about a half an hour. You drain it, and I love this. It's my new favorite grain because it's very sturdy, and it has a good chew to it. So we're going to incorporate that into our black bean and mushroom burgers. So 2/3 of a cup of farro dry, and then cooked into however much that makes. And this is, again, a 15.5 ounce can, of black beans. I don't mind the salt being in this batch because it's going to be turned into burgers anyway. Salt is great if you're going to be making something savory, obviously. If you want, 1.5 cups of black beans equals 1 can, like one standard 15.5-ounce can of black beans. So if you have cooked beans that you made on your own, you would use 1.5 cups, and it's fine if they're salted. It's fine if they're seasoned because just about anything is going to work well. There are going to be a lot of different flavors in this black bean burger. I'm kind of excited about it. So the farro and the black beans are here. And the other things that we're going to add, I'm going to show you. So we're using also oats in 2 of our recipes today, and I will tell you why. Let me add this other stuff first. So black beans and farro, these are mushrooms, about 6 to 8 ounces of fresh mushrooms that I drizzled with a little bit of olive oil and roasted whole, and then I chopped them up. The reason I did this is not only does it have a really good flavor and add some interesting texture to the burger, it also dries it out a little bit. If I were to use the mushrooms in here without getting some of the water, the moisture out first, either on a stovetop or roasting them in the oven, the burger mixture would be too wet. So this is roasted mushrooms, and then I also had in my pantry some dried shiitake mushrooms, which have a lot of really rich flavor and that really satisfying umami flavor to them. So I chopped those up and added them too. So these are the chopped mushrooms. Those are all going to go in there too. Okay. And then I have here 1.25 cups of oatmeal that has been pulverized in a blender. You can also use breadcrumbs, but I like using oatmeal for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it's got more nutritional value than just plain breadcrumbs. The second thing is, you know how when you make a bowl of oatmeal, like for breakfast, I don't do this because I don't like cooked oatmeal in that particular form. But if one were to make a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast, you notice it has kind of that gelled texture if you let it sit for a minute. It's going to do the same thing in our burgers and help it stick together without having to use eggs or flaxseed or some other kind of egg replacer, which is a good thing. So we have then our farro, our black beans, this 1.25 cups of oatmeal that's been pulverized in a little blender. And then we have a spice mix. And this is paprika, onion powder, garlic powder, and steak seasoning. Just one of those commercial steak seasonings that you can find in the grocery store. Okay. So there's that, and the measurements are in the recipes that are posted. And then we're going to add a tablespoon of liquid smoke, which is going to give it that barbecue sort of flavor. Very authentic, I would hope. So tablespoon of liquid smoke, and then 2 tablespoons of just whatever barbecue sauce you like best or whatever's on sale, or both, if it happens that way. So 1 and 2. So this is going to be a very smoky, barbecue-y type burger when it comes out. And I think the mushrooms are really going to accent that once we taste it. So I'm going to mix it with this first, just to get the ingredients well acquainted. And then I think if you've been watching this for the past, I don't know, few weeks or so, I think you will know what I'm going to want to do with this next to make sure that it's really blended well. Now this, I'm going to have to be a little bit careful because we do want it to be well blended. And you can see, because there's so many separate ingredients, it doesn't hold together exactly the way we want it to. So how are we going to get the moisture out of some of these ingredients? We're going to blend them. And we're not going to transfer it from one bowl to another. We're going to use my very favorite thing, this immersion blender. Not too much. We do want it to be a little bit chunky, and we do want some of the texture to be retained. So we're not going to puree it all together, but I am going to use this to bring out some of the moisture of these ingredients that are in here so that they're easier to form up. So I'm just kind of pushing it around in here. Wow. See, it's very, very thick, this mixture. So I'm going to have to clear this out from time to time as I'm mixing it up, but that's fine. I love this thing. If you don't have one, you owe it to yourself. Tell them that Susanna sent you or something. Maybe they'll give me a free one. They won't. Okay, I'm going to get a smaller spatula because that's very hard to clean out. That's better. All right. Good grief. They're not coming for me, are they? They might be. All right. So this is great though, because the stuff that's getting stuck in here is exactly the texture that we want. It's very, very thick and it's sticking together, which is kind of a pain as far as cleaning it out of this, but it's exactly what we want to make the burger. I think that ought to just about do it. I'm going to use my hands now to see how well it's forming together. I'm going to keep you, little guy, on standby, but it might be that we are right where we need to be. Okay. So like I said, I'm using my hands. I'm going to wash my hands first because I've been messing with other stuff here. I'm trying to set a good example, you know. Okay. So using my clean hands, I'm going to kind of squish it around in here and sort of do the rest of the mashing with my bare hands. It's very satisfying actually. And this is sticking together perfectly well because there was just enough moisture that came out from using that little blender to help it to stick together. So it's in this nice workable mess here. And I can still see the black beans, some of them. I can still see some of the those individual farro grains in here. It smells wonderful. It smells like barbecue, honestly, because of the liquid smoke and the barbecue sauce. Okay. Still see some of those mushrooms, but it's very sticky, which is exactly what we want. So you can see it was that mix of just kind of separate ingredients that wouldn't hold together before. And now it's like a ball of dough. It's holding together really, really well, mostly blended, but also with some really tasty separate pieces still left in there. So I'm going to form this into a ball, and we're going to let it sit there and just kind of continue to merge together. I'm going to wash my hands again, and let's check on our brownies real quick. Talk amongst yourselves as I get this out from under my fingernails. All right. Okay. So the burger mixture is pretty much done. And let's take a look at the brownies and see how they're coming along. Let me turn the camera over to the oven so you can see what I'm doing as I check. I know they're not done yet, but I just want to have a look and see how they're coming along. Okay, so they're starting to puff up just a little bit. They look a little rough. Not rough like bad, but the surface of them is rough. And that comes from the fact that they're made out of pureed beans and oatmeal. So it doesn't look smooth and glossy the way that a regular pan of brownies would look, but they smell wonderful. And you can see these little pockets of chocolate chips that are melting in there. I can't imagine that it could possibly be that bad if that's what we're dealing with. So the next step that we're going to take is to start making our curly fries. Now I know, because I saw them come in, that Art and Bobby Richardson are watching right now. Art and Bobby Richardson are wonderful people, for those of you who don't know them. And they had this wonderful little gadget that somebody gave them and that they had not had the chance to use yet, and they wanted to know, might I be interested? And the question or the answer whenever anyone asks me, do you want to use this kitchen gadget, is always yes. So this is one of those really nifty little spiralizers that you can use to make zoodles, you know, zucchini noodles. When they gave it to me, I used it to make a cucumber salad. So I spiralized a cucumber and I mixed it with this homemade sort of spicy Asian peanut dressing. It was fabulous. I don't even like cucumber all that much, but I wanted to see if I would like it, if it was fun. And I did. So that worked out well. So you can do potatoes, you can do apples, you can do carrots, because I did carrots also, and cucumbers. And they have all these really nifty little settings that you can make really, really skinny spirals or thicker ones. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So earlier, I went ahead and did a couple of potatoes in that spiralizer. And they're right now sitting in olive oil. I know it looks like pasta, doesn't it? So they're sitting a little bit of olive oil, and the olive oil has been seasoned with paprika and garlic powder and onion powder. So it's going to taste a lot like a curly fry recipe that you would get at any kind of fast food place. But I wanted to save one potato so I could show you how cool this thing is. So you set it up on this little stand, right? And you push that all the way there. And then holding it, you just turn this thing and look. Isn't that cool? All these little spiral potatoes are coming out. It looks so professional. I can pretend like I'm in some sort of fancy restaurant kitchen. I guess fancy restaurants don't have curly fries, but if they did, they would look like this. So here is that whole potato, completely spiralized. That took all of like 15 seconds. Into the bowl they go. And what's left is like this little core of a potato that I'm going to snap off, and then the end, which you might as well just fry those up in the oven too, because why would you waste a potato, right? So I'm going to toss around this last potato with the olive oil and the seasonings that's already in there, so that they all get evenly coated with that garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, and olive oil. And of course, because they're fries, I'm going to add a good bit of salt and toss it around with that also. But if you don't have salty fries, you might as well not have fries at all. Okay? You can really smell the seasonings in here. It smells absolutely wonderful. And again, it's kind of like chocolate in the brownies. How could you go wrong with potatoes in any form, right? As long as they're cooked. So a little earlier, I got a baking sheet ready with some aluminum foil. And we're just going to spread. See how long they are? You didn't know a potato was that long, did you? You can cut them if you want, but I kind of like the big mess of potatoes all spread out. And as they cook, they stick together a little bit better. So when it comes time to flip them, it's actually a little easier to have them in one big coil like that. You can turn them over a little bit more efficiently. So the potato ends are in here, the ends that I trimmed off when I put them in the spiralizer, and so are the little cores that are left over when you're done making the spirals out of them. Waste not, want not, especially with potatoes. So they're all spread out on the baking sheet just like that. Okay. They smell wonderful. They look like curly fries. And I'm going to increase the heat on the oven to 425 because they need to bake at a little bit of a higher temperature. So increasing that. And by happy chance, the brownies are done, I think. Let's do that handy test for the skewer to see if they really are done. Doesn't find one. Here we go. Okay. So I will let you in on the brownie testing. Let's turn that back over to the oven. Perfect. Okay. So here are our brownies. And they are done. So that worked out well. They do not look like traditional brownies. I'll tell you that right now. So you can see they're a little bit rough looking, but they smell really good. And the proof, as they say, the proof of the pudding is in its eating. So we'll see. So let's take now our potatoes. The oven is now set at 425. And we'll just put those little guys right there. And we'll set the timer for 10 minutes because in 10 minutes, we're going to flip them over and continue their cooking. So 10 minutes. And let's see how those go. In the meantime, we have, of course, our cast iron skillet. And we're going to get that going at about medium-high heat. And now that I am standing here looking at you, waiting for this to heat up, I remember an ingredient for those black bean burgers that did not get put in. And I don't want to say it's too late, but it's a little bit too late, because what was supposed to go in there was what I didn't get out of the fridge when I was doing my prep work, which was a half a cup of chopped onion. It's very sad. So we're going to have to do without the chopped onion. But I'm thinking that this time the seasonings will probably save the day. I guess we'll find out. If not, then next time I'll know the chopped onions make the burger. But I don't think that'll be the case. We'll find out. So here's our big lump of burger mixture. I'm going to move these cooling brownies. You have to let them sit for at least 10 minutes before you cut them, because they have to cool off and kind of solidify a little bit before you do that. And the recipe also says, the one I looked at said, if you chill them, they're a little bit easier to cut, of course, but that's true with regular brownies too. So we'll let those sit for 10 minutes, and maybe by the time dinner is ready, the brownies will be ready for dessert. You can only hope. So this is slightly over medium heat for this cast iron skillet. I'm going to turn the camera just a little bit more over here so you can see just a little better what I'm doing, or it is to say trying to do. The other thing that I have ready is a burger bun with butter, or in this case, vegan butter, spread on both sides. Just before these are done, I'm going to put this buttered bun in this oven right there on the rack at 425 degrees, so that this margarine, this vegan butter melts and the bun gets a little bit toasty. That works for anything, any kind of hot sandwich that you're eating on a bun like this. If you butter it and toast it first, it adds so much to the rest of the burger. So whether you're eating a regular one or a meat-based burger or any kind of hot sandwich, butter the bun and toast it first, and you will be very grateful that you did. It's wonderful if you do that. So here's our pan getting nice and hot. We're going to use a little bit of cooking spray and make sure that it's very well greased on the bottom. I'm going to wet my hands just a little bit. It's like anything else. If you're making meatballs, or if you're making a vegan burger or vegan meatballs, make your hands a little bit damp first, and it won't stick as fast. So just a little bit of water, just dampen. Ooh, that's hot. Dampen your hands a little bit. The size of the burger patty is up to you. If you're making little sliders for a group gathering, not that we're having many of those these days, but just in case, you might. You can make them a little bit smaller, or you can make them a little bit larger so that they fit the size of your bun. Whatever you do, make sure they're pretty thin. There's no shrinkage with this. There's no fat that's going to shrink the burger and make it smaller. So you might as well just make it whatever size the bun is that you're using, because it's not going to change its size. There's a little bit of residue on the bottom of this pan that I'm going to get rid of now that it's heated up. Cast iron pans are a wonderful advantage, but you do have to do things differently. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, literally, we'll put a little bit more oil on the bottom. Here's our first patty, about the size of the bun, pretty thin. Slap it in there. Now, when I listen to the sizzle, I feel as though I can probably increase the heat just a little tiny bit. A little more water on my hands. Another good sized chunk of that burger mixture. And it's holding together beautifully. I thank the oatmeal. I think that this would not have worked quite so well with the breadcrumbs, but the oatmeal, the way that it's the way that it is, I think it really helps this to stick together. These also, like all the other plant-based burgers I know of, freeze very well. So you can make a big batch, you can make a double batch even, and fry them all up and put them in the freezer. And then when you're hungry, you just grab one out of there and heat it back up on the stovetop or in an air fryer or in your microwave. And it's very easy to do that. It's like I always say, having food in the freezer is like money in the bank. I mean it. Okay, so we have 3 of those little guys in here. We're going to flip that first one. Like I said, they're holding together just beautifully. I feel like I can probably increase the heat just a tiny bit more. The other thing I'm going to do is spray just a little bit of this cooking oil on the top layer so that they get brown on both sides. I'm also going to get a plate to put these on right here, along with a paper towel to drain off any of that residual grease that might be on there from the pan. Okay. All right. So right here, these are cooking up really nicely. So yeah, I think turning the heat up was probably wise. That, you know, they're substantial enough to where I'm not worried about them burning. And now they're getting a nice brown on the top or on the surface that's being cooked. That one did a whole flip. There we go. So you can see they're holding together well enough that even I can't break them when I'm trying to flip them. That's saying a lot. And while those are cooking, I'm going to go ahead and form some of these, form some of the rest of this into some patties to cook when these ones are done. So I can really tell now that I have my hands on them and I'm kind of squashing them out into patties, there is a lot of texture in here, and that's a good thing. If they were kind of a homogeneous texture, they wouldn't be as satisfying, I don't think, when it came to eating them. So I'm glad that we have them a little bit chunkier than what I was thinking would happen. So definitely the black beans, you can see those in here, definitely the mushrooms, and everything else seems like it blended in really beautifully. I am a little disappointed that I forgot those onions, because those probably would have been great, especially if I caramelized them a little bit, but next time I will remember. And the good news is, now I have some onions ready to go, chopped up in the fridge, so not everything's a loss. Okay, these are almost done. I'm just flipping them one more time so they get cooked really evenly on the top and on the bottom. Gives me a little more time to form these up into patties. And this is a pretty good batch. So there are 3 in here. Now with this one, there are 3 in here, and I think that there are at least 3 or 4 more worth of this mixture in the bowl. So this makes almost a dozen, about 9 or 10 good-sized patties, and they are full of protein. These are really good for you because of the beans and the oatmeal. And right now, if you are not consuming a lot of mushrooms, you might consider how to incorporate more mushrooms, especially the more unusual ones, oyster mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, maitake mushrooms. Go to one of the Asian markets and just kind of explore the possibilities when it comes to mushrooms. They are very high in immunity boosting nutrients. And pandemic aside, flu season is always flu season. Anything you can eat that's going to help your body work more efficiently to fight off any kind of infection or disease is definitely something you want to try out. So here's one of our little patties here. Just going to put it on that paper towel, and it's, you know, the paper towel is probably not even necessary. These are not greasy at all. If you remember, when we were making the mixture itself, there's no oil in it whatsoever. The only oil that's in here is the oil that's sprayed into this baking pan, and that's pretty minimal because it's this spray. So we are going to spray. Now we're going to take this next batch, stuff them in here. Now they're sizzling. That's what I'm talking about. If you learn to cook by ear, you'll be a lot better off. So I hear this beeping at us, which means I need my tongs, because we're going to check these potatoes and flip them over. So let's get our handy dandy little pot holder here and take a look-see at what our potatoes look like. Ooh, they're sizzling. They're oven frying. This is fabulous. So like I said, the fact that they're all kind of stuck together in some ways makes it a little bit easier to scrape them up and flip them over. They're still pretty floppy, but that's all right. This one looks really crispy. And the other thing I'm going to do, and this is because of my oven, not necessarily because of the recipe, but because I have an oven that just does this, I'm going to turn the tray, the cooking sheet, the other way because it will cook more evenly. That off. Okay. And it smells just like a batch of curly fries from a restaurant, from the paprika and the garlic powder and the onion powder. It smells just wonderful. Okay, so this is getting really nice and cooked up and crispy. So we're going to put it back and set it for another 10 minutes. 5, 10. All right. That's a very tasty mix. I really like that. So we're going to flip our burgers now. They're getting nice and browned, very firm. This is one of the few veggie burger recipes that I've worked with so far that you don't have to be very careful about turning over. They're really not falling apart at all. So I'm very impressed. So let's make these last batch into some patties. But before I do that, I'm going to put this bun, this vegan buttered bun, just right on the oven rack so that it gets just a little bit toasty and so that the butter melts a little bit. We might get an even dozen out of this if we're lucky. Okay. I know it's probably boring watching me make vegan hamburger patties out of this, but do your best. Chat amongst yourselves. I promise we'll have something interesting to look at soon when I try these out. But I want my bun to be nice and toasty with lots of melted vegan butter on it. I do miss cheese, I have to say. But speaking of cheese and speaking of delicious food, those casseroles that I made last week, particularly that buffalo macaroni and not cheese casserole, first of all, it lasted. That was that whole 9 by 13 inch pan of buffalo macaroni and not cheese casserole with those little chewy tofu bits in it and the cauliflower. That lasted me until Monday. Okay, so it lasted almost a week, and it got better every day, which is precisely what you want a casserole to do, because you know that casseroles are going to last a long time. So it's an added bonus when they taste better, when they improve in flavor from sitting in the fridge day after day. It was better on the last day than it was on the day I made it, and that is no joke. In fact, when I went to the grocery store today, I bought all the ingredients so I could make it again and keep it in the fridge. It was wonderful, wonderful. I was very pleased. I think that might be my favorite recipe so far, which is saying something. We've got some really good recipes. So let's see. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. These look, well, they look like veggie burgers. I'm not gonna lie. They don't look like beef burgers, but that's all right. They're still good, I bet. We're about to find out just how good they are. But before we do that, in the interest of what I said when we started the class tonight, that being life is short, eat dessert first, I'm so curious about these brownies that I have to try one. It has been 10 minutes, right? Oh yeah, it's been more than 10 minutes because I made those potatoes. So in the interest of full disclosure, I'm going to turn that camera back over so where you can see me. And I'm going to get an appropriate knife to cut the brownies. Let's see how they slice up first of all. All right. Okay. So it's holding together, right? Steamy. It smells like a brownie. I'm serious. This is fantastic. It's got an earthier flavor than a boxed brownie mix or regular brownie mix. It's got more substance to it, but the flavor is pure chocolate. I love it. Brenda might remember, a few of you others might remember, I attempted to make a black bean brownie recipe with all coconut oil. That's the one that turned out weird. It was not good. I had never in my life thrown brownies away. I consider that to be a kind of sacrilege, but I threw that batch away because it was not good. It was very gluey and weird. I wish I was more articulate in this matter. This batch, it's still a little bit crumbly because it's hot, but the flavor is really spectacular. And if you serve this to somebody, They would wonder probably why the texture was a little rough looking on top, but then they would taste it and they wouldn't care. Very chocolatey, but not overwhelmingly rich. I feel like, okay, no, I don't feel like I could eat this whole can, but I feel like I could eat a lot and not feel overwhelmed by richness. Remember, there's only a half cup of oil in this whole batch, and everything else is oil-free because there aren't any eggs and there isn't any dairy. There might be trace amounts of dairy in the chocolate chips. They do have completely vegan chocolate chips available, but I don't have those. So there might be a trace of milk fat in the chocolate chips that I'm using, but really, as far as brownies go, you could do a lot worse nutritionally, and actually, you couldn't do much better because of the high protein content that you're going to find because of the black beans that are in there. I know some of you were doubtful about black bean brownies. I get that, but I urge you to give this recipe a chance. It's really good. I'm excited actually that I have a brownie recipe that I like. Woo, hot. At the risk of being slightly risque, I will tell you my buns are hot. All right, so here they are. Hot, toasty, a little bit buttery, vegan butter, I should say. I have some pickle because I am a pickle gal when it comes to the kind of burgers that I like. So let's put some pickle on there. I also have some mustard because I prefer mustard over ketchup any day. So a little bit of mustard. And let's pick out that one. That's a good looking one. All right, so here is what the burgers end up looking like. It looks pretty convincing, if you ask me. Let's get a knife. Because I want to cut this in half and see what it looks like on the inside. And also it'll make it easier to take a bite, I think. Okay. So here's what the inside of that burger looks like. Again, pretty convincing. The bun looks good. The middle looks good. It's holding together pretty well. Let me check on these before we get to the moment of truth. All right. So this batch is also done. We only have one more after this one. I will also say, cooking mostly plant-based. I know that I've said this before, but like just now, I was running out of room where to put these cooked burgers. And because it's all plant-based, and I don't have to worry about cross-contamination, I was able to just stick the cooked ones right where this uncooked one was, because I know that there's not going to be any weird animal-borne bacteria or diseases in this uncooked mixture. It's really kind of nice. And when I wash my dishes, I don't have to worry about sanitizing every little bit because I'm worried about that kind of thing. It's just, it feels cleaner to me. You know what I mean? So I know that the fries are a little bit not quite ready probably. We still got about 2 minutes, but I want to look and just see if I can pull out a couple of the extra crispy ones to put on my plate here. In fact, I'm going to switch plates. So I got the bigger one. So we've got the burger here. Oh, they're sizzling and they're crispy. Oh, how delightful. Okay, so let's grab a couple of these extra crispy ones from the sides here. They're still cooking, but the ones that are done look fantastic. So let's get those from the sides where they're cooked more quickly. Some of them are still kind of squishy, but that's all right. They're still potatoes. And I have cooked these in a deep fryer, and they turned out beautifully. They look like really interesting little bird nest potatoes. You could get fancy with these if you really wanted to. Okay, I'm going to turn the timer off. So we ate dessert first, but here is the main dish. So we have our burger, we have our curly fries on the side, and let's test it out. I will be honest with you. So here's our burger, our black bean and mushroom and farro burger. Mm-hmm. Mm. I'm trying to place what makes the difference between this one and the last recipe of black bean burgers, which we did, which were good, but this one is more satisfying. I'm pretty sure it's the mushrooms. Let me flip this one and I'll go back to you in a second. Hold on. All right. As I was saying, I think it's the barbecue aspect of it, that liquid smoke and the barbecue sauce, but the mushrooms and the toasted bun make a huge, huge difference. It's really very tasty. So here's one of our crispy little curly fries. They're wonderful. And here are some of those crispy little ends that got baked in there too. Very hot. If you have, or if you are a picky eater, try this. Especially if you have children or grandchildren or other younger people in your life that you are trying to encourage to eat more healthfully. Try something like this. If you put this in front of somebody and said, hey guys, we're having burgers and fries and brownies, they would probably know that it wasn't exactly like the burgers and fries that they get from a fast food place, but they would still like it. And you would probably like it because it's a lot healthier than what you're dealing with in a restaurant or when you make a burger out of meat. Even turkey burgers and chicken burgers have a lot of fat content. These are really pretty healthy for you, and they're very, very tasty and very satisfying. So let's see, 46 minutes into it, we have our fries, we have a full batch of cooked burgers, we have a big batch of delicious chocolate brownies, all of it pretty healthy. The fries are probably the least healthy thing. There's a lot of oil in there and they've cooked at kind of a high temperature, but they're still whole potatoes, so you've got that going for you. So in 46 minutes with a little bit of prep time on the front side of it, you have a full meal that's really healthy, really filling, and not terribly, it's certainly cheaper than meat would be. And even a boxed brownie, I think, would be more expensive and not as healthy. So that is our plan for tonight. I'm going to finish cooking this last burger over here and get the fries out of the oven, and then I'm going to eat my dinner. So thank you for joining me as I cook it. I hope you learned something. I hope it's useful to you. The recipes are always online, and I'll see you next week. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you.